A countdown of just 1 decade. That's how long scientists give the Thwaites Glacier's ice shelf before it shatters. For decades, this frozen giant, the size of Florida, the size of Britain, sat silent on the north coast of West Antarctica, stable, predictable. Now it's the most unstable glacier on the continent. But here's the unsettling part. By every measure, the glacier is winning. It's melting faster than it can be replaced. And that victory means catastrophe for every coastal city on Earth. Picture Miami, Shanghai, New York, London. Tens of millions of people living on land that will be underwater. The question is not if Thwaites collapses, it's when. And the answer is not what you expect. It's not about the water itself. It's about what happens when a glacier the size of a country decides to let go. This is the story of a glacier that could drown your city and the desperate plan to stop it. Imagine a glacier the size of Florida, but it's not in Florida, it's in Antarctica, on the north coast of West Antarctica, and scientists call it the Doomsday Glacier. Its real name is Thwaites, and it earned that nickname for one reason. It holds back the entire West Antarctic ice sheet. If Thwaites destabilizes, it could trigger a wider collapse, raising sea levels by a staggering amount, enough to drown coastal cities from Miami to Shanghai. Thwaites is one of the most unstable glaciers on Earth. Between 2018 and 2025, UK and US scientists collaborated to investigate it. What they found was alarming. Warm ocean water is eating away at its underbelly. The ice shelf, the floating front that acts like a cork, is fracturing. Scientists warned that shelf could collapse within a decade from 2021. That timeline is not distant. It's now. Engineers have proposed a radical fix, anchored seabed curtains to block the warm water. But the glacier is vast, remote, and already moving. The question isn't whether it will change, it's how fast. But what makes this glacier so uniquely dangerous compared to others? Beneath the surface, the real threat hides. Thwaites doesn't just sit on land, it floats out over the ocean, held in place by a thin, fragile ice shelf. That shelf acts like a cork, but warm water, pushed by shifting currents, has found a path underneath. It carves cavities into the ice from below. Scientists dropped robotic submarines into the dark, and what they saw changed everything. The glacier's grounding line, the point where it lifts off the seafloor, is retreating faster than any model predicted. Warm water is eating away at the ice from the inside, weakening the entire structure. If that ice shelf loses its grip, the glacier behind it has nothing to hold it back. And Thwaites doesn't just hold its own ice, it acts as a dam for the entire West Antarctic ice sheet. Destabilize this one glacier, and you unlock a cascade. The seabed beneath is sloping backward, meaning as the ice retreats, it exposes deeper, warmer water, a feedback loop that accelerates collapse. Scientists warned that the ice shelf could collapse within a decade from 2021. That timeline is not theoretical, it's being measured in real time. How could these findings rewrite the timeline for disaster? Subscribe to stay ahead of the next global crisis. The Thwaites Glacier is not just melting, it is unraveling. Scientists from the UK and US spent years, 2018 to 2025, watching it from above and below. What they found shocked them. The glacier is one of the most unstable in Antarctica, but the real speed lies beneath the surface. Warm ocean water is carving cavities into the ice. These cavities grow. They weaken the structure from underneath. In 2021, scientists warned that the ice shelf holding Thwaites back could collapse within a decade. That is not a distant threat, that is now. Picture this. The glacier is roughly the size of Britain, but it is not just one block of ice. It is a keystone. If Thwaites destabilizes, it could trigger a wider collapse of the entire West Antarctic ice sheet. The consequences would not be gradual. They would be sudden. Coastal cities, Miami, Shanghai, London, would face a surge they cannot outrun. But the melt itself is accelerating. The glacier is losing ice faster every year. Warm currents do not stop. They only deepen. Therefore, the question is not if Thwaites will break, but when, and what happens when the keystone falls. What would happen if the entire West Antarctic ice sheet followed suit? Picture a city you know, the subway entrance, the ground floor of a seaside hotel. Now imagine water rising, not in a storm surge, but inch by inch, year after year. That is the slow-motion future, Thwaites is writing. The glacier sits on the edge of West Antarctica, but its collapse would not stay there. It would pull the entire ice sheet with it. Therefore, the world's coastlines would redraw. Miami, New York, Shanghai, London, each would face a creeping invasion. Not a wave, but a permanent tide. Streets become canals. Fresh water turns salt. Millions would have to move. Not because they want to, but because the ground they stand on is no longer land. Scientists have watched this for years. Between 2018 and 2025, UK and US teams drilled through the ice, sent robots into the cavity below. What they found was worse than expected. Warm water is already eating the glacier from underneath. The ice shelf, the cork, holding the glacier back, is... You are standing on the ice below you. A current of warm water is carving a cavity large enough to swallow a city block. The glacier is not just melting from above, it is being eaten from beneath. And that is where the engineers are aiming. Their proposal is audacious. Anchored seabed curtains. Massive sheets of fabric or plastic, bolted to the seafloor, rising like a submerged wall. The goal: block the warm water before it reaches the glacier's underbelly. Picture a curtain stretching for miles, hundreds of meters tall, holding back an invisible enemy. But the scale is staggering. Building this in one of the most hostile environments on Earth, where storms can last weeks, where ice and darkness dominate, would require a fleet of ships, a small army of engineers, and a fortune in funding. And even then, the ocean is relentless. Currents shift, icebergs scrape the seafloor. The curtain would need constant repair. Therefore, scientists are divided. Some say it is the only shot. Others call it a distraction, a band-aid on a bullet wound. Because even if the curtain works, the glacier is already unstable. The warm water is already deep inside. Would these ideas work, or is this just a band-aid on a bullet wound? The clock is ticking. Scientists warn the Thwaites ice shelf could collapse within a decade from 2021, meaning the countdown is already running. If it goes, the glacier behind it, the size of Florida, will follow. But that's just the beginning. Thwaites acts like a cork. Pop it, and the entire West Antarctic ice sheet destabilizes. Therefore, sea levels don't just rise a little, they surge enough to drown the world's coastal cities. Miami, Shanghai, London, Mumbai, each one faces a slow, inexorable flood. Tens of millions would become climate refugees. Yet there is a plan. Scientists have proposed anchored seabed curtains, giant underwater barriers designed to block the warm ocean currents that are eating away at the glacier's underbelly. Picture a curtain stretching for miles across the seafloor, holding back the heat. It sounds like science fiction, but the alternative is worse. The UK and US have been collaborating since 2018, racing to understand the glacier before it's too late. They've drilled, mapped, and modeled. They know the threat. Now they must decide: deploy the curtains or watch the ice crumble. The answer might determine whether your city survives the next century. When the Doomsday Glacier collapses, the world's coastlines will redraw themselves in a matter of decades, but not all at once. First, the ice shelf, a floating tongue the size of Florida, shatters. Without it, the glacier behind it has nothing to hold it back. It begins to slide, faster, then faster still. The ice meets the warming ocean, and the melt becomes a flood. Scientists warned that this ice shelf could collapse within a decade from 2021. That window is closing. Picture Miami, Shanghai, Dhaka. Tens of millions of people living on land that will be underwater before the century ends. Not a slow creep, a sudden, irreversible surge. The glacier itself holds enough water to raise global seas by 2 feet. But that's just the beginning. Its collapse would destabilize the entire West Antarctic ice sheet, unlocking a rise that could drown every coastal city on the map. The lesson is brutal but clear. A single point of failure can trigger a cascade that rewrites the rules for everyone. In nature, in markets, in monopolies, when the keystone breaks, the whole arch falls. No backup, No second chance. But this glacier isn't the only hidden monopoly threatening your world. Next time, we uncover the secret cartel controlling the global food supply and the one man who tried to break it. This is the Monopoly Matrix, where the world's risks meet reality.